Okay, you're good.
And NJ, roll call. We have a quorum.
We do have quorum.
And I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda for today.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
We have a first and second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Abstentions, motion carries. And we have a meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024. That was a year ago. So
Do you remember?
I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes, or if we have any discussion, we have any questions about the meeting minutes first? I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024.
I will make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024.
We have a second.
Sure, I'll second.
Yeah, Brian.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, okay, motion carries. And we have public comment today, and I think there's one public comment here, and then Brian has some things to say too, so. The first public comments from Leonard Wagner, and I'll read it into the record. Some years ago, the planning at the city of Scappoose advocated for the approval of a new master plan for the Scappoose Airport, including annexation, zoning, and infrastructure that brought more than 250 acres plus of industry zoned land into the city. This is also the back of your packet too, if you guys want to follow it. Included in that plan was the potential for 7,000 new jobs projected in industrial, aircraft, and aircraft related fields. I'm just reading it directly from here, even if there's typo.
Yep.
As impressive as the plan was with data, concept drawings, and economics, there has seen, unfortunately, nothing that has come of the process except a significant amount of expense for infrastructure and a road system that doesn't meet any city standards and could never accommodate the projected jobs. Being presented is a 50-year plan from the same planning department looking to the future of Scappoose. 3 years into the making, the plan projects the annexation and rezoning of various parcels to commercial industrial, whose only practical future usage is for multifamily housing, increasing the density of usage as well as changing the community's ratio of single-family homes to apartments. It is hard to imagine anyone believing that government or any individual has a capacity to see 50 years into the future. But didn't Scappoose have 50 years ago? Population was less than 3,000. There were no medical centers, no assisted living facilities, no Fred Meyer, no 4-lane highway, no movie theater, no coffee islands, no fast food with drive-throughs. Traffic on US 30 was less than 10,000 vehicles per day versus 36,000 vehicles per day today. Community consisted of farms and single-family residences, a sauerkraut factory, a candle factory, 2 small grocery stores, and bird hunting at multiple lakes. The state of Oregon has mandated that all communities, cities, develop a regular review of current land uses within their boundaries, allowing planning to anticipate growth. The normal time period for projection changes is some 20 years, with the reviews every 5 years to allow for unanticipated growth opportunities. 50 years seems like a stretch of visionary skills. Signed, Leonard Wagner, 5/19/2025. Brian, would you like to read, or?
I guess I'll read it. So I want to preface this letter with, I strongly support the idea of increasing our UGB and land. I think it's really necessary for our economic development and for a better quality of life for all Scappoose residents. But I do feel that in the commercial land selection section, we have some issues. So let me read this. If somebody did not get a copy of this and they would like one, I have extras, which I'd be happy to hand out after the meeting is over. The Scappoose 50-year plan has some issues in its commercial land site selection, which should be addressed to maximize the benefits and minimize the issues of the plan. The current plan recommends rezoning 68.5 buildable acres north of Scappoose Vernonia Highway and Crown Zellerback Road to fulfill around 30 years of additional land supply for commercial development. By comparison, the 50-year plan only has 8 additional buildable acres of commercial land south of Crown Zellerback Road to be rezoned or added for decades. Current owner of that 8-acre parcels south of Fred Meyer has expressed a desire to build apartments. If they do, there may not be any additional commercial land available for commercial development south of Crown Zellerback Road. All development would be forced north of Crown Zellerback. Furthermore, 51 of the acres of the 65.5 acres north of Crown Z is owned by one owner. If the developer's plans do not match that owner's location, vision, or price point for the land, they will be out of luck, and so will Scappoose. All this will hurt economic development in Scappoose by reducing locations, flexibility, and options for future development. The unintended consequences of rezoning 51 acres of buildable land owned by one owner to commercial zoning could be up to 26 apartment complexes the size of Candlelight Apartments. That could be as many as 2,000 apartments. This could happen because Scappoose commercial zoning allows for apartment complexes outright. The current owner of the 51 acres may not plan to build apartments, but he or future owners could change direction. 4 of the last 5 commercially zoned projects in Scappoose were apartment buildings because the economics of apartments are better than general commercial development. If even half of the land was used for apartments, it could change our city into a bedroom community of apartment dwellers with an insufficient tax base, recreation lands, emergency services, and educational facilities to support them. Our community is great, in part because of our roughly 70% houses, 30% multifamily housing ratio. Let's not alter this ratio to our community's detriment. And then another thought, if commercial development happens north of Crown Zellerback Road, pedestrian accessibility to those businesses would suffer due to the distance that the location from existing housing. The current plan would also effectively move the city's commercial center north, forcing more peak PM trips onto Highway 30 through Scappoose before getting drivers to their destination. Traffic situation on Highway 30 is already bad, particularly during school hours. Building apartments instead is not a good alternative to the peak PM and AM trip problem. Most of the residents would likely commute through all of Scappoose to jobs in Hillsborough or Portland area, thus also creating traffic problems. The solution to the above mentioned issues is to split the commercial lands between northern Scappoose and southern Scappoose. First, we should reduce the gross amount of land planned rezoning north of Crown Zellerback Road by only rezoning 28.91 gross acres of parcel on West Lane near Omix, and not rezoning the additional 36.82 acre parcel adjacent to Crown Z on West Lane. Then, if the 28.91 acre parcel is commercially developed without an over-reliance on apartments, the 36.82 acre could be added at a later date based upon need. Basically, what I'm saying there is that if we burn up all of our commercial lands, then we can always ask for more. But if the land is brought in for commercial purposes and it stays vacant, then we don't have the ability to bring in land there or anywhere else. We're stuck with it. And so it becomes kind of like how the airport now is, where we have a lot of land, but we have no development. And we don't have the opportunity if somebody somewhere else in the community said, hey, I'd like more industrial land. Well, they can't rezone land industrial because we already have more capacity than we have need. Let's see, what was I? So, let's see. Okay. Let's see. Lost my place, sorry. Yeah. Second, we should add some land on the southern side of Scappoose from areas 5 and 7 to the urban growth boundary expansion. This area is more commutable to work in metro area with the fifth, and it's going to just kind of work better for the whole idea here is you give many options to many developers for many ideas. So we don't know what the future holds for us, but we do know that if we try to put all our eggs in one basket, we're going to end up in trouble. And when you try to go with a single vision, no matter how good that vision is, it's limiting. There's a lot of different people in this community that build and do things. And there'll be a lot of new people coming in the next 50 years. And to say you can have anything you want as long as it's this, that doesn't make sense. The best way to get economic development is you give many options to many people. And so I'm just asking that we try to do a flexible plan that allows for growth and diversity in our future. And will facilitate a larger variety of development aspirations. And that's kind of it. I have to say I feel very strongly about not putting all of our land north of Crown Zeller Back Road. I think it will change our community. It will potentially lead to large-scale apartment construction because I don't see a demand for that level of commercial up there. And I think it's going to limit economic growth and development elsewhere. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
No, we didn't receive any other.
I'll turn over to you, Lori, for a project recap.
Okay, perfect. So if we could pull up the first slide. Cool. Oh, we could advance.
Give me one moment. I'm just having a little issue with my system here. It will just take me 1 second to fix it, and I'll bring that one up in a few moments if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Hang on. I have backup here. All right, and you should have the packet in front of you as well. So for tonight's agenda, we will go over first an update on project progress. Then we will review some development code updates I'm bringing to you tonight for the first time. We'll discuss the analytical progress since the last SAC meeting, and that will be covering the transportation planning rule analysis, city council direction on expansion areas, our revised land need, and then review of the draft 50-year plan. So in terms of the update on the project to date, we do have a slide here. Again, thank you all for being on this committee and being involved for the last 3 years. We did start in 2022. What we have covered so far is we kicked it off with our 50-year plan vision statement. Next, we worked on our housing needs analysis, and then we completed the economic opportunities analysis. Other land needs memo, land use efficiency measures were completed. We worked through our comprehensive plan update, development code updates, and then the UGB alternatives analysis. On the other hand, on public engagement, we did hold a series of community conversations. The 50-year plan we took on the road to a few different community events. There were 3 different annual town meetings we presented at. We attended the Farmers Market and Adventure Fest, just asking different questions and informing people about the plan. We also held 2 different visioning surveys and had a total of 457 responses. We have been keeping updates in the newsletter as we've gone along. And then tonight is our 16th and final stakeholder advisory committee meeting. So again, thank you all for taking the time to work through this with us. We appreciate it. We're going to go on. Go ahead.
Are the slides showing right there?
Yes, they're perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Perfect. So again, that's what we just went over. So next up, we're just going to touch briefly on the code amendments. So the code amendments are to Chapter 17.74, which is the airport employment overlay zones. So this chapter of code was written in response to the previous economic opportunities analysis from 2011. This EOA was the basis for justifying the 300+ acre UGB expansion to support airport related, but also a variety of light industrial, commercial service, office, and airport supportive uses. So,
Lori,
yes,
I was in the middle of eating my sandwich there. Can you back up one slide, please?
sure.
Just maybe expand a little bit on why it's been a year since the last time we met.
We're going to go over that a
You
little
will be on
bit.
later.
Yeah, a little bit further. Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
These edits are proposed to remove references to the previous EOA and to reflect current conditions. The proposed edits are minor. They don't change any permitted or conditional uses. You do have a copy of the proposed edits in your packet. Again, it removes references to the previous economic opportunities analysis. And the one change that would be the only thing that is somewhat substantive is it does reduce the minimum site size in the airport business park overlay zone from 5 acres to 1 acre. And that just offers additional flexibility for any type of airport related commercial development in the future. 5 acres could be a rather large size for complementary type commercial business. Aside from that, again, it's just referencing our current EOA, and that's about it. So if anyone has any questions about those changes, I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
I do have a
Sure.
question. Thank you. So I feel at some point back in this process, when we started to evaluate the land needs and the current inventory, there was a point made to not break up the industrial land because once you break it up, you can't undo it. And that was really valuable for the community and the future development of the community. But now we're seeing an alternative proposal.
So the airport properties specifically have an underlying sort of supportive light industrial base. And so that is a large chunk of the industrial land supply. We are showing quite a surplus of industrial land in our economic opportunities analysis. And so that was the impetus for entertaining some rezoning from industrial to commercial. That still leaves us with, did you have that figure? Was it, how many acres do we still have in surplus after the rezones, Nicole?
Give me one moment and I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm looking too.
I think it's on another slide as well.
I'm not actually sure it's on any of these slides. Can we get back to you in a few
It's
moments?
It's 140 acres of industrial land surplus, even
So-
after all of the rezones.
So that was the reason for entertaining the rezones at all, because even after the rezones were in effect, there would still be 140 acres of surplus industrial. And that's looking out at a 50-year horizon.
And so do we have, like, looking at an infrastructure perspective? So if we were to go to commercial, we could probably anticipate some higher, denser uses, perhaps more people, more businesses.
And so we'll talk about that a little bit from at least the transportation aspect of that. And then Chris, in terms of industrial, effects on, say, water and sewer compared to commercial, would you say commercial would have less of an impact on our infrastructure in terms of water and sewer?
It generally would. Industrial users can have low impacts as well, but it can really a lot more
Yeah.
than industrial versus commercial.
Correct. So in terms of transportation, that was what we'll be covering next.
Okay.
Sure.
So if this land has not been developed at the anticipated pace, have we identified some of the barriers? Would I be suggesting something blasphemous if I said, do we decouple this from airport activity and make the land more widely used?
Yeah,
from a
so
purpose
it does not
perspective?
have to be airport related. It does not have to be. And that was envisioned as this land around the airport came in to the UGB after 2011. And so obviously, if it is airport related, that's great. If it's light industrial, that also works, so long as it does not impact the airport operability. So no glare, let's see, no, interference with the planes, no smokestacks, things like that. So there is no requirement that it is specifically airport related. So that's not an issue.
Have we identified what any of the barriers may be currently to development?
In terms of, I just want to set the record straight because there's some implication that nothing's happened out there. And correct, there's nothing built on the east side of the airport, and that was the area that came in most recently. However, you may recall that there was a lawsuit involved with that UGB expansion. Once that got resolved, the landowner promptly applied for annexation of the property. That went through its process, the land use process. Once that land was in city limits, the landowner immediately applied for an industrial subdivision approval, 4 different phases. That, as you know, the roads have been built in the last few years. So literally the infrastructure has been under construction this whole time, since that land has been available to come into the city. So it is just now, we have 2 phases of the 4 plats recorded, and then phase 3 and 4 are still pending to be recorded. So it's taken a while to get this land ready to develop, but it's ready now. So it's taken some time. Also, the comment about, significant cost to the city, the developer was conditioned to provide all of the infrastructure to serve that 300 acres. So they put in the municipal well, they put in a sewer pump station, they put in all the roads, they were conditioned to do offsite improvements as well. So it's ready. It's nearly ready. You're welcome.
Are there any issues with utility, enough power for leases to go out there?
So power is an issue across the entire county and frankly across the state. That is being looked at currently. The Columbia River PUD has done a series of studies for the region to see what it's going to take to bring additional power capacity here. It's the transmission lines that are the main issue. Paul could speak at length on that. Paul Vogel's with us tonight. That might be for another discussion, but yes, it is a potential constraint that is currently actively being worked on.
I do have kind of follow up on that.
Sure.
So are the roads and sidewalks and all that after development, is that going to be the responsibility of the city, or how is that going to work?
So the roads are dedicated to the city. The sidewalks are always the responsibility of the abutting property owner. No, throughout the city. Okay, any other? We'll move on. Next slide. Okay, so this is the progress since the last meeting. And next slide. So one of the things that I've been working on my side is the transportation planning rule analysis. So anytime there's an amendment to a comprehensive plan, zoning map, or the development code, there is a requirement in state statute OAR 660 012 0060 to essentially do an analysis to check if the change you're making has a significant effect on the transportation system. And that's because when you adopt a transportation system plan, it's looking at what's in place, what the zoning is at that time, and making assumptions for the future. So if you change that after that transportation system plan's been adopted, you need to then have a look back and say, does the change you're making have some large impact? So a transportation planning rule analysis was completed for all of the parcels proposed to be rezoned. We did work through that. That did take some time to wait on our traffic engineers' timeline basically to get those studies done. And then there was back and forth with ODOT and DLCD because I wanted their buy-in on the methodology and to make sure they were comfortable with the proposal before just heading to adoptions with that. We also did a transportation planning rule analysis there were a couple there was one new use added to the commercial and expanded commercial zones. And that was in support, if you recall, it was in support of allowing like microbreweries or micro wineries kind of on any commercial or expanded commercial zone properties. So that one did show no significant effect. It was limited to a footprint of 10,000 square feet, but that did not have a significant effect. Now, when you're changing from an industrial zoning to commercial, commercial does typically have higher trips associated with it than industrial. So our industrial properties, the majority of those did have to, until we update our TSP, did have to accept a trip cap. The trip cap is 400 daily trips plus whatever the TSP had already assumed for that use. So in most cases, and I've already communicated this with all of the parcel owners, those trips average anywhere from 600 daily trips up to 2,700 daily trips. So there's a range of different trips there. The properties can still develop in the meantime. Again, up to this maximum daily trip amount. But when we update our TSP, it will recognize this new zoning, and presumably those caps would be able to be extinguished at that time. So that is the transportation planning rule analysis that was required and that was completed. That took us a little bit of time in this last interim. Brian?
Question. So when you talk about a 400 trip cap, that's per parcel?
That's per parcel, 400 daily trips.
Now, if a parcel came in and it was subdivided, would they have to divide that 400?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like a percentage of the acreage, essentially.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And when do you guys anticipate doing a new TSP?
Yeah, so I'm applying for a TGM grant this year. If we were to get that funding, then based on when they allocate the funding and kick everything off, it would start roughly in a year from now.
Okay.
And it would probably take about a year and a half. They have a time cap of 18 months.
So 2.5 years total. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Were there any other questions about the TPR analysis that we completed?
And Jay, if you can monitor online, let us know.
I don't see, oh, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, I think we can move on to the next slide. And I'm going to pass this to Beth.
Beth, and if we have questions for Nicole about some of these details, we'll give her a moment to find them. Because all of this work is at this point very, very detailed.
Yeah.
So part of what we did is went to the city council and looked for some direction on a few of the questions that were being brought up last spring. So some of the analysis we did is we brought stream buffers into the list of hazards. Natural. They weren't barriers, constraints. That's the word I'm looking for. Wow. That was a hard one to get to. It made a very, very small difference. If we looked at the constraints map, you can just see the stream buffers, and most of them are within floodplains, but some of them are outside of floodplains. So now we're accounting for stream buffers. And then we are also looking more closely at some of the rules and doing an expansion. And in response to the request for could we in some way count less capacity on some of the smaller cut up lots? We used some rules that are available to discount capacity on lots smaller than 2 acres. So a lot that is, being brought into the UGB that is 1 acre or smaller that has a house on it. We weren't counting additional capacity on that, so no additional capacity. And then lots that were smaller than 2 acres, if it had an existing house, we were counting a capacity of 1 more dwelling unit. So that allowed us to discount capacity on those smaller lots within the state's current rules. We also looked at how much land in the expansion areas was on slopes between 15 and 25%. And it was a small amount of land that wasn't otherwise constrained. I seem to remember it was on the order of about 10 acres or so, Nicole, and most of that was in area 19. And given that it was such a small amount of land and that the level of analysis you'd have to do to justify discounting that capacity, we did not do that. And it happens that as we're looking through the analysis, we're not looking at area 19, which is the area where there was most land of that type. We're not looking at any land in that area to bring in. We also did other things like having a much closer look at infrastructure and multiple conversations around that. So I'll go on to the next slide, which says the other part of what we did. And, doing all of that analysis, in addition to looking at the potential lots for rezoning and the TPR analysis, as well as doing other analysis in the background that is not directly in the path of this this committee's work, but other cleanup of the code, for instance, that Laurie has been working with the city council on. That's a lot of what we spent the last 9 or 10 months doing. Plus writing the 50-year plan itself also, and getting a final proposal for the UGB expansion. A lot of these things are serial, where you can't finish one or start one until you finish the other. So are there any questions about that, or would you like me to go on to continue to talk about the analysis some?
Go ahead and continue.
All right, so here's an example of why we did not make the change in the capacity for analysis between slopes of 15 to 25%. I think the areas that are shown here in yellow, if those are showing up, they're often right along the side. Can you guys see that on the screen in front of you?
Yeah, it's showing up.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm pointing at the wrong screen because my screens aren't quite working right. So those areas are the ones that are in question. So there's about 5 acres of them in area 19, and 8 or fewer acres across the entire sub areas. And it really would have created a lot more analytical work to justify what would be a fairly small decrease in capacity. And then we went to the city council in December and discussed the UGB candidates that were strongest for expansion. We've got them highlighted here in yellow, where in gray are the areas that were lesser candidates that we had in our areas for consideration, but they were lesser for one reason or another. The change really that's you see that's from when we last met is sub area 3, where council gave us direction to consider sub area 3, which includes a little bit of land that is high quality farmland. Nicole, I think you know how many acres of high quality farmland that's in there, but that's some of that land at least is necessary for accessing the rest of area 3. Nicole, how much land is that?
You're going to have to give me a second to find that.
Okay. All right. Area 3 is compelling because of all that work that the city has recently completed on infrastructure and water and wastewater. We also think over a much longer time, which may be within the 50-year period, that the 2 sub areas that are right next to it that are in gray those areas are currently an open pit and well, they're water filled, and were mines, but are expected to be filled in. And so at some point in the future, you may be looking at additional capacity near Area 3. And then we also got direction from the city council to avoid sub-area 19 if possible, because of those constraints and costs of services, connection to the city, that kind of thing. Nicole, if you're still looking that up, I'll continue on and we'll come back to that in a few moments.
Yeah, keep continuing and I'll flag it when I find it.
Yeah,
a-
there's a lot of detail in
We
here.
have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You need the microphone.
Okay.
Sorry, Chief Pritchard just asked if the new road for Columbia Commerce Center was shown in the image, and it's on the periphery of the East Airport area. It's hard to tell. It does not have it does not show phase 1 and 2 having been recorded yet. So it's a little harder to pick out.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before I continue on?
I don't see any.
All right, so I'll continue to talk some about land need. So as a reminder, this is the process for determining whether any city, including Scappoose, needs enough, needs a UGB expansion. Does it have enough land to accommodate growth? We know for certain types of growth, no. Look at land use efficiency measures. For some types of growth, like commercial, once you look at your land use efficiency measures, like rezoning land, the answer is yes, there's enough land for that. In some cases, specifically medium density housing, there wasn't enough land for that. And so then you go to the UGB expansion analysis. So as a reminder, our land use efficiency measures, broadly speaking, included looking at minimum lot sizes for duplexes, middle housing, multifamily housing, revised duplex parking standards, an increased max lot coverage ratio for parcels with an accessory dwelling unit. And then I think what's more interesting to the conversation here is the looking at rezoning land. And I think the big change since you saw it last is indeed the area for proposed rezoning here, about 51 acres from industrial to commercial. And that's where we are right now. Are there any questions? I heard comments earlier about this.
Yeah, Brian Rosenthal. So we never discussed that 51 acres being rezoned until we got our packets a week ago. It just showed up. And as a group, we had discussed wanting a diversified approach to commercial development where we would have it spread out over the city. It'd provide a variety of opportunities for various businesses and developers. But now suddenly it's all clustered in one spot. Why?
There's commercial all through the city. This is not showing, every commercial parcel. This is just showing the change.
No, I understand, but that one parcel, that one parcel alone is like 30 years of supply. It's staggering in its size compared to the size of our community. So I guess I'm trying to understand why when we never discussed this over a period of 2 years, are we now at the last minute is this being put upon us where it kind of goes against what we as a committee had discussed and had said we wanted, which was, and I understand that yes, there's other commercial lands in the city that already exist.
Sure.
But we're talking about future supply. And this
Sure.
is such a tremendous percentage of our land that we're going to be allowed to have.
Sure.
I don't understand, without that discussion in all of our previous committee meetings, how this just kind of happened.
Yeah, that's a fair question. We did have interest from the property owner to change to commercial. We did have a surplus of industrial, and we did have a shortage of commercial for the 50-year supply.
Right.
So as with the other property owners that requested and the timing being right, we did agree to roll this into the overall look. And then one thing I did want to mention, if now might be a good time. So there's a concern and a fear about apartments being built because it's outright permitted in expanded commercial zone. So what I did was I just for, you know, a reality check on that, because I wanted to see myself. Multifamily development apartments requires that for anything over a fourplex requires site development review. So I went back and looked. Since 2013, we have processed 33 site development review applications. Of those 33, only 6 were for apartments. And of those 6, only 4 have actually been built. So we're talking overall, it's not, I think it's being a little bit overstated, the fear that this would all develop into apartments. The Peace Candle apartments, for instance, are not 100% occupied. I can't imagine that a city our size would support that many additional apartment buildings. The projection as well in the housing capacity analysis for need in the future still maintains a ratio of 67% single family residences as compared to 70% now. So a very small shift in the next 20 years. So
Lori, in that data that you just presented to us, how many acres was that
for
the sites that you just presented to us?
I
Do you know how many
just
acres?
looked at my
Just maybe we can
files.
kind of relate it to this.
I don't have that information right now. Yeah. I was just looking at kind of my total list of site development review applications.
Well, actually, out of the ones that applied,
Of the
4 were built, right?
Yeah, 4 were built
So-
And only 6 applications.
and only 6 applications.
So help me understand, Wayne Wygant built some apartments next to the middle school.
Correct.
We have 2 apartment complexes down Columbia that were built.
Yes.
We have the Candle.
And that's 4.
That's 4.
Yep.
So that's, but those are all done. You're going back very far when you talk about your dates. I'm looking in the last, 6 years.
So that was since 2015. So
Right.
that's been 10 years.
Right. I'm saying is if you look at the current trend, because the trend has changed radically, what's happened is apartment prices are now far exceed value per square foot of commercial space. Commercial space leases in Scappoose, depending on the property, anywhere from about $1 a square foot
Sure.
up to about $1.60 a square foot.
Yeah.
Apartments can go for over 2. So, and that's a recent economic change that's happened in the last 5-6 years as
Mhm.
apartment prices have skyrocketed. So there's that issue. And so I'm looking at more recent trends. And that's part of the general problem I have with anything that's radical is that this is a 50-year plan. And I don't know what the future holds. You don't know what the future holds. None of us do. So the only way we can protect our kids and our grandkids is by having a plan that is flexible and is diversified and doesn't put all of our eggs in one basket. When we try to make it, for a very narrow vision, there's almost no chance that vision will be 100% correct because no one can.
Sure. Yeah.
No one can do it.
And the
So-
farther out you look, right, the less certainty there
Right.
is.
And
And
so-
we know that. Yeah.
I mean, if it was if I had a choice of putting 51 acres that could become apartments or not reducing the amount of land we brought in, I would actually reduce the amount of land I would bring in because I just think it would change our community so much. As far as the ratios, you talked about that it still maintains that 7, roughly 30-70 ratio. But that's making assumptions on the percentage of what commercial land will be used for apartments. If you adjust those assumptions, which again, there's no way to know what they are, then that 30-70 ratio goes out the window.
Not necessarily. We have made assumptions about a certain percentage of commercial developing with apartments. But again, this is those percentages are based on future projected needs.
Not actually. Now, as happened in St. Helens, where they built roughly a 250 unit complex, that ended up being largely Section 8 housing and other types of low income. I don't know, maybe you know better than I do, but I believe 2/3 of the residents of that place are not from Columbia County. They basically started importing the poor from Portland Metro out to St. Helens. I'm concerned also that another potential issue here is with Section 8 housing, which would be outright allowed, that we could basically become a dumping ground for Portland's poor.
You know, I mean, Brian, we could surmise a lot of different things, but I mean, at this point, we're going off of studies and outcomes that were prepared in line with how we need to do these studies. And it's not showing that in the future, we're going to be appreciably different in terms of development than we have been in the past, percentage wise. So, I mean, we could
Yeah,
share, we
right.
could share all night about,
Yeah.
you know, our fears. And,
I would only throw out one final thought on that, and that is we've never had a 51-acre buildable commercial site in the history of our city. So this is something radical.
so,
I'm sorry, he wants to speak. I've spoken.
sure.
We got Beth
I
on
think
the
let's go Beth first and then we'll go to Chief.
I'll just mention that getting a lot of income restricted housing, which is what Brian was just referring to, is heavily dependent on state and previously federal funding. That funding isn't there isn't a lot of it. And so I certainly wouldn't surmise that there would be a lot of low income housing in Scappoose, because there's a lot of need for low income housing all across the state, and it's a very competitive market essentially, and there's not a lot of funding for that. So I understand the concern, but you know, realistically, you know, any time in, I don't know, the next 20-25 years, a lot of income restricted housing in Scappoose just seems very unlikely, especially given the distance it is from Portland and the services in Portland.
Thank you.
Chief Richard.
Question for Lori. With respect to the 51 acres, is that also within the urban renewal district boundary?
No, it is not.
That is a good thing. And the reason why I say that is one of the challenges with some of the apartment projects that have gone in St. Helens as well as in Scappoose is, at least with urban renewal, it would make it difficult for public safety, not just fire, but also law enforcement. We see a big presence in these types of living environments. And when there's no tax revenue to support that, they put a big demand on those public safety resources. So just something to consider when we start talking about apartments. I think it's one thing that a lot of people forget about.
Yeah.
But you know, more commercial would be of benefit, especially because there's not much developable area that is not within urban renewal. So that would be a good
Correct.
thing for
Yeah.
the community, or at least the city's general fund.
Jeanette.
I just have two comments. Couple of things is that this is not planned, not written in stone, and can we revisit it in 10, 15 years?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah.
This is a point in time look and a plan. It is not set in stone. It can be changed. It can be altered in the future based on new conditions.
And then my second comment is that studies have shown across, and not just in Oregon, but our population is not growing.
Not as much. Yeah.
And right, and so it's pretty much going to stay the same for a few, I said decades. I know.
I mean, our growth rate's 1.2%, and that's
Right.
based on PSU population.
So
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure we're taking that into.
Correct.
Thanks.
Is it considered downzoning though to go from commercial to industrial in the future?
That's a good question. Beth, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I would probably call that down zoning.
Okay.
I think the more likely is to some sort of middle housing, medium density housing, which I'm not at all clear is a down zone. You'd need to look at the economics of it at the time. So, so in other words, the southern part of that area, some of that, and you know, then growing into the northern part of that area might well be attractive. Some parts
Are
of
you,
it.
I'm sorry, Beth, are you
housing.
talking about area 3 right now? Or are you talking about the 60 acres?
Oh, I was talking about these two parcels here.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, not area 3.
So,
Yeah, no, good.
so just so to summarize what just was kind of said, so it does sound like we cannot revise it in 10 or 15 years in saying that if this is a mistake, we can't, once we make it commercial, we can't take it away. Is that correct? Because we'd be open to litigation.
I don't know that that is set in stone either, because it would depend on what the future needs were. In other words, if a study was done in the future, an economic opportunities analysis that showed we did need additional industrial, then there would be a need for that, and we could consider that rezone.
I
Oh,
think
thought that-
you're referring to Measure 49 and a concern
He-
about that.
Yeah, he is. If we had I guess the difference is if we had a willing property owner that was interested, then yes.
But if they weren't willing, which most people wouldn't want to reduce the value of their property, if it's more valuable, they're not going to, in most cases, agree to a reduction in value. So,
And that would be, that
So-
is potentially, I don't know that the city would want to go in and force a rezone on someone.
right, so
Yeah.
that's, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we do need to make sure that what we do here is something that we're comfortable with for the foreseeable future, because to put it mildly, it'll be very difficult to unwind this later.
Mhm.
We can always add land if there's need, but we can't remove land if it's not the correct need, or if it's an excessive need, or if the land is not used in the manner we thought it was going to be used. As far as what Chief Pritchard said, I 100% agree. We need more commercial land. I'm just saying we need to spread it around the town more, and
Yeah.
give more people more opportunities, which is so I'm not negative growth.
Yeah, you're just saying move it, spread it out.
Spread it out.
The
That's
issue is like where does that go?
Well, and we are constrained, and I
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't take part of that land
sure.
for commercial.
Yeah.
I just think that it's too much.
Noted. Yes.
I have a question, and I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to this. So if we rezone these two little blue areas, Parker Pit, let's say that.
Sure.
So it's industrial right now, correct?
Yeah, it is in the county currently. It's not in city
And
limits.
so if we upgrade it to commercial, we're increasing that value for just that one landowner?
That would be those two parcels
So
specifically.
those
Yes,
51 acres would increase in value. So
potentially.
based off this group's decision, that one person increases his land
It
value?
would be, city council would be making the final decision on all of the adoptable components.
But the end result is the same. So
Sure.
then again, in 15 years, for Jeanette's point, in 10 to 15 years, and to Brian's point, he's not going to want to go backwards. He is the one who would make that decision if he chooses to.
The current property owner would have the option, yes, to make the call on that, correct? As would any of the properties that are rezoning to commercial. Yeah, it likely would increase their property value.
But to
And certainly any land that you're bringing into the UGB, it would
And
increase
any-
the property value.
Correct, yeah.
But again, to Jeanette's point, we can't unravel it because nobody's going to downsize their property value.
And that's to be seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say the current vision for that property, and again, to Brian's point, we don't, we can't hold anyone to what they say today they're going to do in the future or who's going to own it in the future. The vision for that, though, is to be sort of an innovation kind of hub close to OMIC that could support commercial or light manufacturing, because expanded commercial does support some light manufacturing uses as well, supports research and development. It could support housing for faculty and students. And so their vision long-term for that Parker Pit area is to have these supportive ancillary type uses that would be complementary to OMIC and PCC. That's what we're hearing. Again,
So again, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, it could be a mixed-use project. Retail,
absolutely,
restaurants,
everything.
hotel.
That's the vision.
But it's all based on the success of OMIC, which we all want, right? All the residents
Mhm.
want us to be successful, the ones who know about it, of course. But we all want that success. But if it doesn't happen,
Yeah,
then
it could be. And
we just have a filled-in rock pit.
it's land that's ready for redevelopment in the future, whether it be industrial or commercial. So correct, it doesn't have to be associated with OMIC. That I was just explaining that that's
Okay.
their current
I
concept.
saw the vision and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
If it happens.
Yeah.
And both would help each other. I mean,
Correct.
a beautiful mixed-use development there would help OMIC.
It would be lovely for our city, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of ifs.
Another point though to also make is light industrial does allow for a lot of uses, such
Mhm.
as restaurants and things. So a lot of people may not be aware that a lot of there is some overlap. here.
There is, yeah.
But what light industrial does not allow is apartments. And so a lot of the uses that people may want, like retail, like they could put a big box store there in theory if they wanted to. On parcels over 100,000 square feet, light industrial in Scappoose allows for a big box store. So you could put in a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a large Fred Meyer, or a Super Walmart.
Trader
or whatever.
Joe's.
Yeah, Trader Joe's, although they're a little small for that. But I do see the need for OMIG as well, and that's why I really felt like the solution to this problem is to give them some of the land, but not all of it. And that way we can spread it around the rest of the community. That way we put the parcel closest to OMIG as rezone that to commercial, and then the other parcel leave it as light industrial.
Well, then you're gonna have light industrial, commercial, light industrial. So really you would want light industrial closer to light industrial and then commercial on the
There's
south
also
side.
another thing which I haven't quite figured out, which seems like a little, and I don't know the ownership,
Sure.
but there's Cascade concrete products are out
Mhm,
there.
mhm.
That is a very heavy industrial application, which I would not think you would normally want that next to commercial zoning. And that's kind of sandwiched in the middle of this.
It's off to the west and to the
Yeah.
north. Yeah.
It
It's a
fronts
little,
both plots.
yeah, it touches.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyhow, and I also noticed looking, we see this as two parcels here,
Mhm.
but I actually believe that one of those parcels is actually a combination of parcels.
There may be multiple tax lots, but they're two legal lots as
Okay.
far as I'm
Okay.
aware. Yeah.
I was just looking at the tax thing. I
Yeah,
thought broke it
yeah,
down into
they're not,
multiple
yeah.
parcels.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lori, I do have a
Mhm.
question. So
Sure.
I think, as we've been kind of exploring what a downtown or Main Street might
Yeah.
look like for us, because we have the Highway 30 challenge,
Right.
we've been talking about maybe different economic districts
Correct.
around. How would this plan affect the potential to develop a plan where we do have more distributed commercial land?
Well, and I think that this ends up being like this concept that the owners have for this innovation hub in support of, your manufacturing industry sort of at the north end of town. Not too unlike having your commercial center at the south end of town with Fred Meyer and supported businesses around there. You kind of have it sort of sprinkled through town, and similar to Fred Meyer, there's not going to be a lot of pedestrian sort of access there. It's going to be more auto oriented, similar to it would be at the north end of town. You'd still have your main street in the center of town. That's your more walkable pedestrian center. But I just see this as potentially building up as a new commercial center in support of some of our manufacturing. They would be required for the development of that southern lot that abuts the Crown Z Trail to improve that section of the trail. So you would get some good connectivity through there of the trail system. Over time, hopefully, we would be able to kind of make some more pedestrian connections through town south from that new section of trail. So I do think it can all tie together. Yes, it's under one ownership currently. We can't change that right now. I would expect that would parcelize down into smaller lots in the future. We would ask that they master plan that before they annex into the city to see what that looks like, but I do think it's a good opportunity for the future.
So that lot that's on the bottom, those are
Mhm.
2 lots there.
Yeah.
What's the acreage of that one? Is it about,
It's
30
about
acres?
36 acres.
would that be the one that you would, if you had to choose one of those lots to go commercial?
The southern
Seems like that would
lot.
make the most sense.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
And also abutting Highway 30 as well.
Correct.
The southern lot is the larger of the two.
Correct.
And so that is why I actually suggested the northern lot. Otherwise, I would agree with you,
Mhm.
but it's just so much land. So, and it's a little confusing for everybody because we're talking gross and net. When the city goes over this process, they take out land for roads and such. But the one parcel has 20.91 acres and the other.
28.
Yeah, 28.91 gross. And then the other one has 36.82. So
Yeah.
it's substantially larger.
Well,
And so I was
yeah.
trying to, the reason I suggested the way I suggested it was based on not wanting to gobble up that much land again. It was trying to get it down to a size. There is one advantage though of making the northern parcel commercial and the southern parcel not. If there was potential for a big box store and we wanted to have a location in town for it, the big box store would want to be located with quick access to the highway.
Mhm.
And it would also, we would not want that sandwiched in between OMIG and the commercial zoning. And since a big box store is allowed outright in a light industrial zoning, that southern parcel would be perfect. And I'm not saying we're going to get a big box store because again, I don't know. Who knows the future? But we won't have a space for it if we're not careful. Because currently, right now, I don't believe the only other parcel in town is Biddy's that is commercial. That's large enough and in a location that would even be considered. And you might have other ideas, Lori, but
No, I think you're right.
so if we rezone that southern parcel into commercial and it gets parceled out, we don't have room for a big box store other than one other parcel in our city. And that seems pretty limiting for a long-term plan.
No, I think for a big box store, you have to have a minimum population. And according to the estimates, we will never actually
Yeah,
reach the minimum population.
I'm not saying we're going to get one.
And I think that property is, the southern property is better maybe for a big box store, but it's also better for a mixed use
Yeah.
development. too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. No, you're right. No, you're right. I wouldn't argue with you. It's larger though too, so it does kind of curtail some of our other options. One thing I didn't understand, when I went through the land use, by rezoning this property, we actually end up into a surplus in the first 20 years. I didn't know we could do that.
Beth, can you speak to that? Or Nicole?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
it's not like
recall
it's not that you're expanding your UGB and resulting in a surplus. It's that you're changing some of your surplus land from one type of land to another type of land, so one zone to another. And there's nothing wrong with that.
But then in theory, couldn't we rezone all of our residential land in Scappoose commercial and then say we have a deficit of residential land and then bring in a mountain
That's a great idea.
of residential land?
Well, no, I don't think you'd be able to get
Okay,
away
I'm just
with
asking.
that.
Okay, well,
No.
question asked, question answered. Thank you. So, okay.
we can
Um,
get back.
So
So-
yeah, let's
okay.
move on to the next topic, but.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's see, Beth, are we on to the next slide?
All right, on to the next slide. Here's when we do the math, and there's a lot of math behind this because we're reducing the capacity of some lands, that kind of thing. We come out with a UGB expansion that we're looking at about 43 acres and urban reserves at about 314 acres. So put together, that's 358. And then I'll just run through these slides again. As we're doing the UGB expansion, we we, start with the land need, identify the sub areas, which we've been talking about, and then go through the, the final sub areas in the analysis, considering this prioritization, where urban reserve, which you don't have, is the highest priority, and high value farmland, which you have quite a bit around you, is the lowest priority for bringing in. And once you've identified what areas are in your study area, then you walk through the goal 14 factors, which are the efficient accommodation of identified land needs. So in other words, good urban form, good connection with your existing neighborhoods, et cetera. Orderly and economic provision of public facilities and services, which arguably from, I think the city's perspective is one of the more important. The state doesn't necessarily differentiate between these 4 factors, but that's a really important one. And we've been paying attention to that quite a bit and have occupied a fair bit of Chris's time and some of the other staff. Doing an analysis of comparative environmental, energy, economic, and social consequences. And then looking at the potential impact of proposed urban uses on nearby agricultural and forest activities. And so in doing all of that, it led us to this map, which shows in the gray areas, some of the study areas that we considered that we ruled out based on that goal 14 analysis, and then highlighted in yellow all of the study areas that were highest priority. We've reshaped some of the study areas, like I'll pick on little area 6. Area 6 used to include a lot more land that was constrained, and some of this land that's very cut up between area 7 and area 5. We slimmed that down based on some of this analysis and our understanding of what the potential land need was. The areas, here collectively are more than twice the identified land needs. So we're okay in that way. And in really narrowing down the sub areas, we focused on the cost of services, of course, looking proximity to the existing UGB and connections with the city, and then considering farm activity and soil types. So those were, if we had to choose a top 3, those are the top 3 that we chose. And then looking at UGB expansion, if you remember, that was about 43 acres. We are proposing a UGB expansion that brings in all of area 4, and the pieces of area 7 and 8 that are essentially adjacent to the city. Those are the first areas that we're suggesting for bringing into the UGB at this point. For setting up urban reserves, so the next time you're doing an expansion, where will you look? It's all these areas that are highlighted in that bright yellow. While we don't have the information about how much land is in this high value farmland, when we look across all of the land needs, it's 5% or less of the land needs we're talking about. So it's definitely a minority and a small minority of land. Otherwise, all the land that we're looking at is exceptions areas. And the major reason for bringing in this land is so that you can access area 3 and do development there. And area 3 is an area where you have better infrastructure. So it takes you, I think, in the obvious way towards that over the next 20 to 50 years. So that's where we came to. Got a little bit of area, a little bit of land in areas 21 and 1, nothing in area 19.
How many acres is in that area 3? How many acres is that farmland?
I don't have that number with me exactly. I seem to remember it's something on the order of, 10, 15 acres. We can get back to you with that specific number. We asked our GIS analyst for it, and he just hadn't responded quite yet. So we can get back to you with that.
Lori, for people who are map impaired.
Sure.
What's area 3? I mean, I know I see it, it's here, it's yellow, but where is it?
So if you go, it's essentially abutting where the top end of the new Columbia Commerce Center Drive is.
Okay, thank you.
North of there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as I understand it, Lori, you guys have sewer and water lines pretty close to up that far north?
So yes, they were just installed here in the last few years. And it also, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the drainage map, or it accounts, is it the sewer that accounts for that basin area as well? In the Columbia Commerce Center?
Yeah, so there's the sewer, there's gravity sewer to that particular corner. It actually terminates there, but it's sized to pick up a pretty large basin area that's sort of north of that. And then the sewer pump station is built to expand pretty extensively to accommodate that whole basin. It's quite large.
That's what made 3 really jump kind of to the top, because it's just set up for infrastructure to be able to immediately, serve that site essentially. Whereas the further out you go from current city limits, like South Area 5, there's no infrastructure down there. It would cost a lot more money to serve that in the future. So that's why 3 kind of rose to the top.
And the water line that loops around all of that, the Commerce Center and on to Honeyman and West Lane Road, is of the largest size that's in the city's inventory. It's 18-inch, so it's pretty extensive. So it would more than accommodate the distribution system for water. We're just slightly constrained with
So it has the
supply.
utilities, has some good
Good,
utilities.
yeah. So it's set up. So back to the question on farmland.
Sure.
On area 3, part of it's farmland and part isn't. Is it the area on one side of the line is farmland and the other side isn't, or do we not
If you
really
go
know?
back, if you go back to page 20, so the slide right before this, you can see the green. It's just that portion. It's not the area.
Okay, so then the question would be, is there a reason we're taking that particular piece of farmland over something that might be else? So it sounds like a great idea for the rest of it, but for that piece that's farmland,
Sure.
we
So,
might be better off taking a piece that somewhere else that is, RR5 or something.
Well, there isn't any, otherwise we would have.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's just that we have to go through that to make the connection.
Oh, okay, so you're going through there, okay.
Just to get to the
Yeah,
land.
so that's where that's
That's
where
why.
the
That's
sewer
the
and
only
water-
reason. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
okay.
and so what we've tried to do is not split tax lots
That's the other-
into parts. But I mean, the city could choose to bring in a portion of this tax lot, sort of a longer, narrower portion. Which means that depending on how wide it is, it could be an area that is essentially a cherry stem, so a road up to the further top of Area 3. But we're thinking about this more as a cohesive development in the future potentially. So the city could choose to take a narrower slice of Area 3. It just becomes less cohesive and less connective
It
to the
becomes
city.
difficult, yeah, and it becomes just, you could imagine from a land use perspective, when you're, have a portion of the property, say in urban reserves or in the UGB, but not the entire, but you're not, you're splitting property lines. It becomes very difficult. In the future.
The only reason I asked is that there was some other farmland that people had expressed interest in getting into.
Exactly, I
into the thing.
understand.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to face them and tell them why.
I understand. And it's a great question, right? Because we had said the whole time, no high value farmland. The only reason, as we expressed, is because that is the only connection up to this exceptions area of 3. And because we have utilities so close that are so able to accommodate that land's future development, really made it compelling.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. My only reservation is that the east side of the highway has in the Dike, is that in the Dike District?
I did look that up actually, and it only clips certain very eastern portions of this area 3. It is not, all of it is not in the Diking District. It's just a very small portion of the eastern part of that. It's not in the 100-year floodplain. Yeah.
Besides, just more likely to possibly flood if the dike breaks and.
Yeah,
100-year
possibly. And
event
again,
like
we don't, yeah,
That's just,
yep.
I think. it's
Something to be aware of,
something to
yeah.
be aware of.
I'm trying to just wrap my head around this. So is that, I'm probably butchering the name because I don't ever go in that area. Is that Ring Road or whatever that is?
Ring, yeah.
Okay,
So it
so I'm
would
familiar with
be
that area
the-
then. Okay,
yeah,
now I know what it
correct.
is. Okay, I've been
North-
trying to figure out what it is. It's
Yep.
Ring Road.
North and slightly east, just north and slightly east.
Okay.
Freeman Road is also, if you've ever gone up Honeyman and into Freeman, that's also a portion of Area 3.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also potential for, inclusion of a little bit more land in Area 3. You could expand looking a little bit further north also. So, so if that, if the balance of land changes a little bit, there's more land in Area 3 that might be appropriate for considering in the urban reserves.
So the areas in blue are what we would propose to bring into the UGB expansion area if we did that rezoning of the proposed land.
Yes.
If we did not do that, what does
I
the
don't
map
think,
look
did
like?
it change anything with the UGB if the 60 acres went or not? I don't recall if it changed any of the UGB areas.
It changed, I think it was sub area 2, because you would then need a
Oh,
bit of
that's
commercial
right.
land.
That's right. We would need
It
a little
wasn't
bit of
huge.
commercial. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it wasn't a huge amount. I think it was
Yeah.
something like you would need an additional 15 acres. If I'm remembering correctly.
And it
I
would
don't
probably,
even know. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say it'd probably cause you to look some more at some of the land in sub area 3 for urban reserves.
Yeah, and I don't even recall, Nicole, if it was 15 acre, if it was that much, but I do think, yeah, area 2 was something we were going to look at for UGB if the 60 acres didn't go. It was not a big change.
Just a quick question about the exceptions zoning priority 2 area. How does that fit in? And how does
Yeah.
the city service that area? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of around where the city has the park or the end of the CZ Road. Is that sort of the same
everything
thing?
that's exceptions zoning, I don't know if you're looking at a particular area, but everything that's that creamy color is exception zoning. And what that means is that in the county, it's either zoned commercial or residential in the county. So it makes it easy then to bring it into the city. It's a
Okay.
higher priority. That's
Awesome.
all.
That's what I
Yeah.
was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any more questions or comments about this map?
Doesn't look like it.
Nope.
All right. And then the 50-year plan, you all have that 50-year plan. Did you have any comments that you wanted to give us on the document or suggestions for changes to, things in the document?
And this was with your packets that NJ sent out last week. And I'll just summarize briefly. The 50-year plan document is really just a, one document that you could read through that summarizes this project that we've been working on for 3 years. It is a high-level look at the main outcomes of the housing needs analysis, the economic opportunities analysis, the future growth. And so it's really just highlighting kind of key findings from each of the studies and analyses that we've done. So, we've obviously already looked at each of the components that have gone into this, but in terms of, kind of what's highlighted in the 50-year plan document, if you had any comments on that or anything you wanted to share.
So is this the point where I would say I request that we change the rezoning?
You've already stated it
Okay.
multiple
That
times.
was-
Yeah, thank you.
And Lori, I would assume that part of what we do in our next steps, when we're talking with city council, is have a discussion about that and some of the comments that we heard here tonight.
That's correct. Yeah.
So if you have anything you want to make sure that we're carrying forward to city council for their next discussion, I think this is the point where we do that.
I do. I mean, it would be helpful, like, for example, when you're calling out acreage in this map, to call out, and have that already called out on the map, like what acreage, like calling, like, they say section number 2, if you add it, in case you add it, how much acreage is that? Because first of all, in the.
Which, first, I want to make sure I'm tracking you.
This
Where?
map,
Oh,
or whatever visual, so for example, to Kim's comments, like, oh, what if you take this out? Oh, well, we add number 2. Well, how much acreage is that?
We can add that into the presentation that we bring to city council. Yeah.
okay,
Exactly.
perfect.
We've got
Yeah.
all that information. It's just, there's a lot of information that we have.
We'll have it at the ready
So-
next time. Yeah. Because,
That would be helpful.
okay.
On the comment of the rezoning,
Mhm.
be good to get Paul's perspective on that. Paul, are you still on?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. But just the perspective of if we were to take one, because the idea that I think that I would be okay with would be to take one of those lots and the one closest south to make it commercial and the other one keep light industrial. But I just would like to hear Paul's version of economic
Sure.
development in the area. And I know he's talked to landowners over by Omic and
Yeah.
what approach he'd like to take with that rezoning.
Sure.
Chair Kessie, I wonder if you could just restate the question for me.
Well, we've been talking about those 2 parcels that are,
Mhm.
that are planned to rezone from light industrial to, the mouse is pointing to right now, from light industrial to commercial. And the idea of that with regard to economic development in that area with Omic and all the industrial property in the airport. And then what would happen if we took one of those parcels, possibly the south parcel, and made it commercial, left the north parcel light industrial? What your ideas would be with economic development?
Excuse me. Well, my understanding, and these were, preliminary conversations. My understanding is that, first of all, the landowner would really like to go commercial, to generate, sort of a different kind of activity in the area. And my understanding is that commercial would not really conflict with light industrial or even, light manufacturing uses and that sort of thing. Lori, am I correct in that?
Yeah, correct. So expanded commercial also supports some light manufacturing, research and development activities. There is some overlap there for sure.
Yeah. So in talking with, OMIC and some of their members and the landowner, I feel like, the light industrial, we'd be okay if it was all commercial. I don't think, I think the, taking half of it and going light industrial probably still is complementary to the, building 3 that they intend to build at OMIC. And the idea is, smaller businesses, not heavy industrial, not manufacturing, but smaller businesses that would be there to support, business and commercial activity around there. And it just seems like there's a wide enough array of uses allowable in both those designations that it really kind of provides some, diversity and mix.
Lori, I have a
Yes.
question for you. Is it possible to have any sort of written agreements associated with the rezoning about what would be done there? that would provide some reassurance?
It's possible. Obviously, it would have to be agreed upon by the landowner, and he would need to agree to it because it's not something. I don't know that it's something I would necessarily be able to, attach a condition of approval for saying that he must do it a certain way. So that would be definitely a conversation that we could have. I certainly will discuss with him what the feedback was from this committee. So it's possible there could be some sort of a development agreement, essentially what that might look like.
I think you'd want to make that where he doesn't have to do something, but that he can't do.
Right,
something.
correct.
So it gives,
Correct.
we do want flexibility for economic
Yep.
development.
Exactly.
Lori, I had a question.
Yeah.
Could that be like an overlay, like around the airport where it's sort of compatible uses are encouraged?
If we're talking about developing a new overlay there, then that's outside of the scope of this project, but it's conceivable.
I think might know a solution for that, partial solution for that problem, but it still leaves an underlying problem. Couldn't we create a different commercial zoning that didn't allow for, allowed for student housing, but did not allow for apartments? Or
Again, yeah, I mean, absolutely. We could come up
we could do
with,
that. But there is a problem with all what we're just talking about here. If you go to page 16 of the PowerPoint presentation, under total land need with efficiency measures, with all of his land going in, it puts us in the next 20 years we end up with 31 acre surplus. So if we give him the larger of the two parcels, but we don't give him the smaller parcel, it still doesn't allow us to bring in any additional land because for 20 years. So that's still better than 50, but it caps us for 20 years. So basically, we're not allowed to outright rezone anything else anywhere until inventory.
well, presumably, if we have a surplus, we wouldn't need it.
Well,
If
what-
something changes, though, then
No,
there would be
but
the
it's
ability to have a new look.
No, yeah, but what I'm saying is, one of the issues I saw with putting all that land in one spot, there was the
Sure.
apartment issue, but even bigger issue to me is I want to see a diverse, vibrant Scappoose economy, which means a variety of locations and a variety of opportunities for a variety of people. We're still not going to be able to bring in any other land because it's such a whale. It's going to gobble up our entire inventory for more than 20 years.
And it's all
One
one
spot.
owner's land.
In one spot. So
Sure.
that is never a good formula. If we want to, because in Scappoose, we've often in the past gone after whales as far as big, employers like Cascade Tissues. But, often the best way to have development is you go after smaller employers and then you get a lot of those. And occasionally maybe you get a big employer and that's awesome. But by not having more locations spread out over the greater city area, we're limiting it. Let's say somebody wants to do poodle grooming. If that's not part of Parker's vision, they may not be land for that person. And
The
so-
whale died. That's the
Yeah,
whale died.
yeah.
Poodle grooming.
So anyhow, that was my thought, is that there's not just one issue, there's two issues here.
I agree with that.
That'd be a lot of poodles.
A lot of poodles.
So one minor follow-up to that is if the forecast happens as it said to here, then you'd be looking out more than 20 years. But if reality turns out differently than the forecast, which is almost certain to be true partially, and you have more of your commercial land develop, and you're looking at additional growth, faster growth, then your commercial land may well not be a 20-year supply of land. Maybe it'll be a 15-year supply of land. I doubt it's a 5-year supply of land. That would be a very, very fast growth. So what I'm saying is don't necessarily tie yourself into thinking it's definitely 20 years or more of land supply. But otherwise, the other comments you made, Brian, I certainly see your point.
Well, and again, they're saying we're a 31 acre surplus. So even if we use much more land than we say we're going to, we still have 31 acres in excess of the 20-year demand. So not only would we have to use what our projected 20-year demand is, we would have to use an additional 31 acres if all this land is zoned commercially before we could take in any more land. So it's not just that we've gobbled up our 20-year supply, we've gobbled up our 21-year supply plus an additional 31 acres. And that's net, not gross, which is a lot of land.
Yeah, is that net or gross here?
Oh, I don't want to argue that one. From my perspective, it's gross, because this
Okay.
land includes land for rights of way.
Okay.
But you may be using the term net and gross a little differently than I do.
No,
Here,
Okay. Thank you.
certainly.
Do we have any other questions online, NJ?
okay. So.
All right, so our next steps. Our next steps are to talk with the city council and with landowners. Because I think you want to make sure that the people you're talking about bringing into the UGB, et cetera, are willing, or certainly not unwilling. And then getting direction from city council and going on to hearings with the city and eventually hearings with the county.
Yes, that is correct.
Early summer, maybe June? Early as June? Or-
Where are you saying early as June?
Just says early summer.
Oh, this will
Work
just be a
session.
work session for a work
Yeah.
session. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look at the upcoming
Calendar.
agendas and see,
Yeah.
what's available. They weren't privy to, this is just what could be possible for this timeline.
Yeah, because
So-
I didn't see that in the.
I'll have a
agenda.
No, it's not on there yet. We wanted to have this meeting first and
Okay.
then we'll start looking out for planning the work session with council and planning commission. We'll probably want to do the discussion with landowners first, because if there is any strong pushback, we'll take that into consideration as well. Areas 8 and 7 where we're showing some UGB expansion areas, those can be somewhat flexible. In other words, if there were landowners on the periphery of 7 that really, really didn't want to come in, we could push it out a little into 8. It's just that these are the highest priorities because we have streets and utilities stubbed literally to the edges of those areas. So it makes the most sense for future development. So we might hold off on that work session, or we'll talk through it a little bit. But these are just generally the next steps that are going to be coming along. So. But I wanted to thank you all again for being involved in this project, for Pat Kessie, and your vision, 5+ years ago, in really having this long-term look for the city and planning for smart growth in the future of Scappoose. I appreciate that. And, it became a reality. We're at the end of the project now, and really appreciate you all being here, and hopefully, we're setting ourselves up for future smart growth. And Brian, I appreciate your very strong opinion on this rezone, and we'll have a look and a discussion with that at City Council. And I certainly can see your point of view on that. So thank you all. Thank you.
So this process, there's no vote from the committee.
There's no vote. What this has been is a presentation and a collection of your ideas and concepts, which we have throughout the plan been rolling into our process, and then relating that information of what we've heard here back to council and planning commission so that they can consider your thoughts as well.
And if anyone has any additional thoughts, they can go to the council meetings as well. right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. See, is there anything else we need to do here? About
The minute, item 6.
the item 6 is, so that the approval, so committee, because we're not meeting again, would give NJ, you and me the right to approve the meeting minutes.
Right. Yeah, it's typical when an ad hoc committee in particular knows that a meeting is going to be its last to give the chair and the secretary the approval to sign the minutes, and they would get sent out to you all too, so you can see them.
I'll make a motion to do such.
And can we get a second? All in favor, say yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Or aye.
Yes.
Opposed, say no or nay. Abstentions, motion carries. And thank you all for your time. It's been a long process to get through this, but I do appreciate it and everyone. And it started from the very beginning, Christine and Pat and Brian and Kim and other people have kind of come in and gone. But anyway, thank you for everyone for this whole process. And we adjourn.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Do I,
Thank
wait,
you.
I suggest maybe you take a picture
Oh, okay.
so we can put that in the
Yeah.
newsletter. I
Yeah.
don't
You please.
know. The finale.